go start. So welcome everybody. As I do this presentation, you master instructors are welcome to pitch in. Please do. Because I'm not the only person with good ideas on how to run as a family. So anyway, I will check my participants window and make sure that I stay up with that. Okay. All right. Okay, so how to make running a family activity. So this was your Father's Day idea. And came up with my best ideas I have. And like I said, if you guys have some more, please unmute yourself and chime in. So, all right. Here, so there's some basic ideas to guide you. So when you think about running as a family, the whole idea of running as a family is to try to kind of create a nice family feeling. Now, that will depend on the age of your family members. You know, if you got little tiny kids, you do one thing. If you got middle school kids, you've got another thing. If you got high school kids, you might do another thing. Okay, so when you think about running with a family, it's all relative to the age of your kids. And so you have to gauge the activities relative to who you're running with. So that I started off with that just to make sure that everybody's on the same page and realizes that it's going to be different depending on who you're running with. Okay. So, and the idea, I mainly wrote this around running with kids because that's what I was asked, like ideas on how to run with kids. As the kids get older, like I said, middle school and high school, you can introduce a little bit more competitiveness or actual training because they're patient enough to listen to what you have to say. Actually, up until they get about 17, and they will not listen to what you have to say, regardless of how important it is. But you want to, with little kids, you want to just really be in there with them and encourage them and make it fun and playful and everything like that. So I'm going to talk mostly to that. If you have a middle school kid, you can take some variation on all the themes that I present and do it for a little bit older audience. And with high school, you can almost treat them like an adult. Okay, so so I'll go down the bullet list here. So you want to, with kids anyway, young kids, you want to equate fun with fitness and really have a playful approach. It is really not about competition. Little kids, they just want to get their yayas out. They've been sitting inside all day, and it's a good time to, you know, get their energy moving. They need to burn off a lot of energy, but they don't need to be pressed into doing it or coached how to do it or told they need to do it or any of that stuff. It needs to come from a pretty different place. And for some of you who are just having kids coming up into the age where they're beyond the stroller and you're going out with them, it's really important that their first introduction to running or walking or playing as a family is that it isn't competitive. There's no space for that in young kids' mind. And so it's really not the time to approach it from that way. So if you can get playful, it's a really good exercise for adults to learn how to get playful. And it's a good exercise for kids to learn how to make activity, running activity, for instance, playful. So you want to be inspirational. You want to not have any pressure to go a certain distance, to go out for a certain time, to like no pressure. It's really all about getting rid of boundaries. And then the next thing I thought about was it's really important to have it confidence building. So that is one reason why you really want to knock competition out of the equation. Because if you tell your little kid, okay, let's race to the fire hydrant, and you win every single time, that's not going to build very much confidence in that little kid in terms of, you know, running or eventually being competitive or anything. So if you're the adult, you never win. Just get that in your brain. You're not the winner. Get kids into the idea of having physical activity as a part of their life. Now, you don't have to talk to them about doing it all the time. You just have to be the example to be out there all the time, take them with you all the time, you know, so they just get used to the idea of, oh, this is what we're doing. This is just a part of life. This is like brushing my teeth or sleeping, you know, habit forming. And so you want to introduce them to a habit. And if you know, there's so many people who are sedentary that just never teach their kids the habit of being active outdoors or in their body. So it's, if you don't learn that at a pretty early age, it gets more and more difficult to integrate it or learn it or get it into your body later on. So if you can introduce that pretty early on, it's to your benefit, and it's definitely to the benefit of your kids. Instill that desire for activity early on that balances out schoolwork and screen time. Now, this is even more important as more and more kids are getting locked onto their iPhones and computers and doing all their homework on screens and talking, Snapchatting with their friends and everything else. They're always on a screen. So when you go out to have a family activity or you encourage them to go outdoors, it's not a time to bring the screen. You know, don't let them bring their phones or anything like that. It's much better if they can actually see what the world is like away from a screen. So it's any physical activity is a really good balance, because when you're on a screen, you're in your head. I don't care who you are. You know, that's the nature of being on a screen, is that you're using your mind. And it's not always a good thing to be using your mind. Sometimes you really need a mind break, and that means dropping down into some of your lower centers, you know, your moving center, or dropping down into your feet, your legs, you know. Just teach your kids to locate themselves somewhere other than in front of a screen. The rewards, get them to body sense how they feel afterwards, regardless of how they feel beforehand. I've seen it so many times with my daughter, you know. It's so funny. My daughter doesn't like to run. And so when I have gotten her into running, if she's just kind of moping around the house or something like that, or she's stressed out from all the schoolwork she's doing, if I can get her out the door, she always comes back going, God, I'm so glad I did that. You know, getting them out the door might be the biggest challenge you have. But if you can get them after they come back to notice, ask them, so how do you feel now? Did you make a good choice of coming outside? Just let them acknowledge it to themselves, and they will. And they might even someday thank you for it. So that's always optional. Okay, so here we get down to it. So why do it? Why do these family outings, you know, family running? One, like I said, this is gonna be a little bit of repetition, but I wanna go a little deeper into each of the subjects that I just mentioned. So I think it's crucial to instill a love of nature in your kids. You know, I was never a bookworm, and the people I know that were bookworms, that didn't have an appreciation of nature, I always felt like they're really missing out on something, like the outdoors, you know? So one thing I've always appreciated is the appreciation of the seasonal changes in nature. I like fresh air. To me, outdoors meant freedom, okay? And for little kids, it's really just like the world's largest museum. It's unlimited discovery opportunities. So it just opens everything up, literally opens doors when you go out in nature. And so that's one of the main things, is instill that like early on. Like I said, don't force it into them. You just do it. If you want to be a good parent, lead by example. You know, if you want to change your kid, change yourself. And that's the way it works. So for all of you parents out there that are watching this, do your own thing and make it really cool, and invite your kids to go with you, and they'll love it. Okay. The second one, the first one is appreciation of nature. The second one is to instill in your kids an appreciation of the body, especially, like I said, in this day and age when everybody is on a screen. There is very little on a screen that instills any appreciation of the body, unless you're watching a virtual yoga class or, something like that. But generally speaking, the best way to get an appreciation of the body is, guess what? Be in your body. It's instant learning. So instill in your kids a love of movement. Let them feel energy circulating through their body. They can learn how to body sense. You just always just ask them, so how do you feel? How's it feel to run? How's it feel to be on your feet? How's it feel to be outdoors? Gives them an opportunity to do some deeper breathing. If they get out of breath, then they're really getting their little brains oxygenated, and that's always a good thing. And then the other thing is focused and or playful movement. So focused movement, there's one thing is to focus on a screen, another one is to focus on your body, and that's a really good alternative and a good balance to all of that mental focus. Playful movement is a way of kind of using your brain to direct your body and your energy in a less structured way. So anytime you can get less structured with your kids, it's a good thing, because believe me, their lives are structured enough, and you know how structured your life is. So if you need a break, do it for yourself, but also realize that your kids need just as much of a break to get outside. And then the last reason it's a really good one is family bonding. Just really having fun with your kids, just the feeling of doing things together as a family. My daughter's been home from Chapel Hill since March, and we've been doing things. We play tennis. We've been going on, kayaking down the river that goes through town, and always inviting her along. Always. It gives her the option to refuse, but at least I'm offering, and we've done it enough and she knows the result. So that's when I was talking about building that appreciation. She knows that she's going to feel better when she gets back. So even if she really doesn't want to, she'll go, okay, well, I'll do it. And really helps her. So here are some things to do. So there are running activities, there's breath work, there's a whole list that I have of possibilities. Now, you will get a copy of this sent to you so you can read through this list and write up your own options of what you want to do. But this is just an overview of what's possible. So remember, this is not about competition on any level unless you promise to lose every race. Okay, so you got to promise yourself. You just cannot win any race. I don't care how slow it is. If you're racing this little kid here, you want to lose. It's not about you winning, it's about them winning. So there are all kinds of approaches. So there's fartlek intervals, which are really just speed play is the definition of fartlek. So if you have them run fast, have them play at it, and don't have them run very far. Very short kind of bursts of speed. And don't you pick the distance or the speed, have them pick the distance and speed. Like I said, this is not about you ruling the day. It's about them having an opportunity to feel what it feels like. So how far do you want to go? Oh, I'm going to go over to that. I want to run to that fire hydrant. Okay, let's do that. Do you want to run fast? Do you want to run slow? Always just asking them what they want. It's really important. Taking them back seat. You can suggest running backwards, running sideways. All of those are the same things that they do at track workouts, okay? But to them, it's fun and make it playful. And falling forward, like Superman or Wonder Woman, if you look at them when they're about to take off or into the sky, they always fall forward, okay? So they're always, head first. You can also do, walk, run breaks, especially with the little guys. If they want to run for 20 feet and then walk for 30 minutes, that's great. Whatever it takes, So these are just options. You can also play with, and you can do this more with maybe the older kids, over, probably any time from 5th or 6th grade on, you could really get them, introduce them to belly breathing, or watch them breathe and say, look, you're breathing through your belly. And then you just say, well, when you're running, you just do the same thing. Don't go into breathing through your chest. Just keep that belly breathing going. You can also, if you have a middle school or high school athlete, you definitely want to, and they're doing longer distance running, you know, anything from 400 meters on up. They don't want to be breathing. You don't necessarily want them breathing, doing chest breathing and mouth breathing the whole way during their off season or their off days of training, long, slow distance training. Be sure to ask them if they're belly breathing and encourage them to nose breathe, and you know, explain that it just gets such a better exchange of oxygen. If they're a competitive athlete, they will definitely have an edge. So if they're a competitive type kid, you can say, wow, you want to have an edge on your competition, breathe differently or breathe better. With the breath work thing with that age of kids, you can have them, you know, first start with walking, walk, run, or just walking, and have them practice their belly breathing and nose breathing while they're walking. And then you can also have them do breath holding, which is when you just breathe regularly, you know, take 3 normal breaths, and after you breathe out on the 3rd breath, you hold your mouth, and you can even pinch your nose shut with your hands, and then just see how many steps you can take before you naturally want to breathe in. It's not a contest to see how long you can hold your breath at all. Let's just count the number of steps you take before you actually have to inhale, and tell them, you know, this is really going to increase your ability to take in more oxygen when you're in competition. So like I said, breath work really for middle school and older. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Oops. Wait a minute. Running activities. Here's some more running activities. Continued. So with little kids, a silent running contest. Like, how quietly can you run? I tell this to adults all the time. This is what we teach in the Chi running classes. How quiet can you run? If they're running quietly, that's going to make them just kind of naturally have fun, kind of not creating impact. You don't tell them that this is all about not creating impact. You just say, how quiet can you run? That's it. You know, don't go any further than that. Let's see if you can run up behind me and I can't hear you. Okay. Whether you can hear them or not, you act totally shocked when they come up behind you and you go, oh my God, I didn't even see you, you know? So make it fun. And so silent running contest is really fun. It's skipping intervals. Hey, great aerobic exercise at any age. And little kids really, really like it. It'll be fun. And trail running. Now, I used to coach a kids running team, and this was in Boulder. And I had this thing where I had this really nice downhill section of really twisty, turny single track. And we'd stop at the very top of this section of trail. It was only about a 1/4 mile long, and it was all downhill. And I told them, okay, we have this imaginary thing as like a video game where they would just put an imaginary quarter in a machine, you know, and then they would take off running, and it would be like they were in the video, and they were dodging left and right and doing all these things. And they wanted to do it over and over and over. So they really learned how to be great trail runners, learned how to pick up their feet, you know, learn how to run through the trees, and it was really fun. And I used to tell them, pretend you're an Indian brave and you've got a message for the chief. Okay, and they would like, so get them to use their imagination too, you know, and they'll do it. They go for it. It's really fun. And these kids were, you know, all from 7 years old on up, and we had a ball. So all kinds of little running activities to make things fun. And like I said, if any of you have any other ones that have really worked for you, unmute yourself and speak up. I'm sure there's some really good ones out there. And then there's technique play, which is, and this is interesting. You can actually teach kids some technique without them knowing you're teaching them technique. Okay, and that's the best way. You don't want to say, you know, you've got lousy running technique, we're going to try to improve it. It's not about them even improving their technique, it's making them aware of technique. Just aware that there is such a thing as, yeah, a way to run that's possibly better. So I do this horse and rider. We do this in the Chi running classes where I put a strap around the person in front of me and they pull me around. That's a horse and rider. That gets the person in front to fall forward. That's how they're going to pull you. You don't, you know, so they, if they don't fall forward, they can't pull you. So you pretend like they're the horse and they're pulling a carriage and you're the carriage and you're holding the reins. You're saying, giddy up and go faster and go slower. So you can get them to go faster and get them to go slower just by them having fun pulling you. Big wheels on your feet, you know, have them, you know, really get circular with their feet, like they've got big wheels, like they're riding a big bicycle, okay? Have them do an airplane where they run with their hands straight out their sides like they're two wings. This will really encourage pelvic rotation. None of this is without, you know, this is all without letting them know what it is they're doing. Kids naturally run well. We all ran great as kids, but we all ran unconsciously. We weren't aware of what we were doing when we were running really well. And the important thing that we all had to go through and we all need to go through is to lose that natural ability to do it well, so that when we gain it back, we gain consciousness of how we move. So there are people that make it clear to adulthood without being conscious of what they're doing. But they're usually the best runners in the world. I remember Runner's World did an article on the Kenyan running, and they asked one of the famous Kenyan runners, so how do you run? The guy goes, I have no clue. I don't know. I just run. Nobody ever taught him to run. Nobody ever told him how to run. He just ran. And because he had always run, you know, barefoot or with minimalist shoes, and he'd always followed the models of everybody around him, he ended up running really well. But nobody had to tell him, okay, I want you to fall forward, I want you to kick your heels up, I want you to do this and that. He didn't even know what it took to run well. He just knew he loved running, and that's what he did. So this whole technique thing, you don't have to tell them that you're teaching them technique. Like I said, just give them these fun exercises like games to play, horse and rider, big wheels, and flying like you're an airplane. Follow the leader is a great one. So when I say see the list above, have them be the leader and have them pick what you do next. So if I go back upstairs, have them pick a distance and a speed. Have them, do you want to ask them if they want to run backwards? Ask them, you know, have a list and they can tell you what they want to do. And so play follow the leader, where you're not the leader, they are. And that really helps create empowerment and confidence. And, you know, they can tell an adult what to do. And that's always beneficial for a kid at any age. Sometimes we disagree with what the kids try and tell us to do, but this is a good version of that. Okay. And then there are times if you want to go out walking or hiking, you know, with the family. One really good thing to do is to just make note of posture. Like if your kids are carrying a pack, you could tell them, you know, that pack gets much lighter if you stand really tall when you walk, you know, because there will be more support through their structure to hold that pack and to walk with it. Have them practice standing really tall and, you know, being pulled forward by a kite string hooked to the crown of their head. And there's all kinds of fun little just images that you can use when you're walking or hiking. When you're going uphill, just make sure, to tell them use your tiny steps. And you can also have them feel the difference. Oh, okay, let's take really big steps up this big hill. Okay, now let's take little tiny steps up this hill now. Which one felt better? Did you like one over the other? And sometimes if they say, wow, it's so much easier to, walk with short strides, just go, well, good, let's do that then. So when you're talking with your kids, just really make them kind of the center of attention, the center of focus, and more or less the leader. Make them feel like they're the leader. And then there's an exploration activity. So how many blank can you find? So you can play with tree types. How many butterflies can you count? How many mushrooms do you see as we walk through the forest? Anything, let's find some, well, my daughter was young. We used to play I Spy, and you can play that while they're walking on. It takes their mind off of the actual hiking or walking, especially if they get tired. And you can say, I spy with my little eye something that's blue, and they got to find it. And so the other thing with if a child is complaining about being tired, let them rest. Okay. If they're just complaining because they know if they complain enough, you won't have them do anything more, just totally change the subject. Find a new game, So just reroute their whole attention of, no, I don't want to do this. But if they're saying they don't want to do it, listen to them. And respond by telling them that you're listening to. So I understand. I hear that your legs are tired. We can rest here, and as soon as they feel better, we'll either go forward or go back, But listen to what they're saying if they're actually tired. And don't say, oh, you wimp, come on, get with it. Suck it up, kid. Trust me, I have heard too many parents that behave that way. And it's really, there's nothing they're going to learn from that.
Hey, Danny, I can't remember what book it was that I read, and I want to say it was Robin who recommended it, like at one of the instructor weekends.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this idea of why so many adults don't like to exercise, or, because our experience in PE, or was either we had parents forcing it, or you had, let's play kickball, and then you would pick your team. And then if you were the last one and you had a bad experience as a kid, it's going to ruin your whole idea of what exercise should be.
Absolutely.
So it's just kind of interesting. And the other thing I was going to say on the exploration, and I have no experience with this, but I know geocaching is a really big thing nowadays.
Oh, it's fun.
Yeah, and I don't know anything about it.
I find geocaches all the time when I'm not trail running. I'll take a rest. I'll look under the bench I'm sitting on, and oh my God, here's a little box. But I understand what you're saying, and also, there's. I don't know if it still goes on. Well, it probably still doesn't go on because they no longer have gym classes.
Yeah, right.
but in gym classes, they used to use running for punishment,
Right.
You spoke up and you weren't supposed to talk in class. So go give me, 5 laps around the gym, or give me 30 push-ups, or, it's all physical punishment. That's so wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I totally hear you. So those are some ideas of what to do. Okay. So I was asked to actually do a little promo for the new Chi Running Student Athlete Program. And you guys came up with this. So if you want to, pipe up and explain it a little more, it's a live 6-week program, starts July 13th. And like it says here, it's perfect for high school, cross-country, track, and soccer athletes. I can't tell you how many track and cross-country athletes are out for the season within the first 2 weeks of the season. They lay around all summer and they go to track practice or cross-country practice, and the coach is paid to win So he wants to ramp them up absolutely as fast as he can. And the only way he knows how to do that is to work their asses off. And that's a formula for failure. Okay. Um, it would be so much better if coaches really were aware of the fact that the body takes time to build up. And if they really want their running athletes to do a better job, the onus would be on them to encourage their athletes to run during the summer, any amount, even if it's short, so that when they show up at practice, they're not like, busting their guts to try to keep up with what the coach is trying to get them to do. So typically coaching for students is focused on logistics and motivation, while training is limited to generalized or basic strength training programs. That's all coaches know how to do. It's not about technique, it's how strong you are. And so they want to try to build those muscles as strong as they can, as quickly as they can. And strength and quickness in training don't mix at all. Almost no time is spent on teaching the student runners how to run correctly or efficiently. And if coaches just took a little bit more time at the start of each season to teach the kids just basic principles of how to run correctly, it would be great. So we've come up with this new student athlete program, which I think is a totally amazing idea. It's great. We haven't come up with it before because we've been so focused on just, running for adults that we never had the bandwidth. But now we've got this group of people just totally dedicated on expanding that bandwidth and reaching into more areas of focus. So the result of, your student athlete going through this training program, this 6-week training program, is that it'll help ensure that they are not injured right off the bat. And not only that, but if they learn how to run correctly, they're more efficient. And when they're more efficient, they can run faster for longer. They will outdo the competition. And in Chi running, you learn how to run uphill, how to run downhill, how to pace yourself, all of that stuff that the coach will never show you. If you have an uphill, they just say, push harder. If you go down, if you want to go faster, push harder. You want to beat the competition, push harder. They don't have any other answer. And so this really allows them to learn to run in a way that is actually good for their body. And it's not only that, but it ends up being good for them to be able to realize their full potential. Because a lot of kids just totally burn out in high school because the coaches are so hard on them, and they just decide, you know what, I like running, but I'm not going to do this stuff. Either that or they just don't ever run again at all and end up not liking the sport. So it's unfortunate, but hopefully if this takes off and we get it into more schools and school systems, coaches will really start to see the advantages to really doing it right and not just doing it on strength. Here's what you'll get. Your student will develop efficient running mechanics that lead to higher performance and injury prevention. That's what I just talked about. And you'll enter the fall season with a solid foundation of fitness ready to excel. So this program starts July 13th. There's all of August, and then you go into September when cross-country season starts. And if they're a track athlete, gosh, you've got all the way till next spring, and by then they will be smoking hot. Okay. So you enter the fall season with a solid foundation of fitness. Because while they're learning to run well, they're doing mostly aerobic training. So it's skills, it's running skills, but it's also really deepening that aerobic training. So cross country in high school is generally a 5K race. And so they will learn how to get their distance up to a 5K with no problem without having to jump into tons of hard workouts to get that up to a 5K. So ideally, if I was a high school cross country coach, I would have my kids get up to a 10K. before the season starts, so that when they go to run a 5K, it's like, oh my God, this is like, I get to go home early. You know, that's that's building confidence, and it's building a really good attitude towards the distance they're running, that it's much shorter than they're used to, so it's easier. It also helps them develop mindful attitudes and learn effective strategies that support high performance during the competition. Okay, so what we mean by that is that mindful attitudes, effective strategies are like how to run in a crowd, like I earlier said, how to run uphill, how to run downhill, how to weave in and out, how to use what you know to your advantage without having to always rely on your strength. You know, it makes a much more well-rounded runner. If you're not only strong, but you have really good technique and efficient technique, so you can hang on to that strength longer. And then if you can adapt your running technique to whatever the course throws at you, then you're making that adjustment, and everybody else around you is just doing it on strength. And so you can really save yourself a lot of that valuable fuel and everything else if you know how to handle every situation during a race. And so we'll begin accepting